I'm Rachel Donovan. I'm 32, and tonight at my sister's engagement party, I was introduced to everyone as her baby sister who pushes paper at some base in the desert. She said it with a laugh, with her hand resting on Lucas's chest, with her perfect red dress, sparkling diamond, and camera-ready smile. Her fiancé smiled politely. Everyone chuckled. And I just stood there, holding the tray of champagne she'd asked me to pass around. What Melanie didn't realize, what she never realized, was that I'd seen Lucas before. Not at a dinner, not at some networking event. I'd seen him in a darkened command room, 4 floors below the Pentagon. I'd seen him lean over a secure table, briefing notes in hand, as I issued orders during Operation Sentinel. I hadn't worn heels and makeup that day. I'd worn my uniform, because I don't push paper. I'm not a base clerk, I'm not a desk assistant, I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force. The youngest woman to hold my position at the Regional Aerospace Defense Command in over 3 decades. But to my family, I've always just been Rachel, the quiet one, the helper, the girl who never raised her voice, the one who showed up early and left without a fuss, the one they could ask to take coats, pour drinks, and carry folding chairs. Tonight, Melanie made her usual show, flashing her ring, bragging about Lucas's firm, parading her life like an Instagram feed brought to life. She dropped little digs at me between compliments to herself. Rachel works at an airbase somewhere, probably files Lucas's paperwork. People laughed. Lucas kept looking at me strangely, like he was trying to place something. I could almost see it forming behind his eyes. Then came the moment. The one I'd imagined 100 times over the years. The question floated out between bites of salmon and wedding planning chatter. "So, Rachel," someone said, "what exactly do you do out there at the base?" I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I set my glass down, met Lucas's eyes, and said one word. "Colonel." The table went still, like someone had cut the music. Melanie's jaw tightened. Lucas's hand froze mid-reach. And suddenly, I wasn't the invisible sister anymore. But before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever been so underestimated you stopped trying to be seen? Ever kept your success small just to protect someone else's ego? Because that was me. Until tonight. And this is the story of what happened when the truth finally came out. The thing is, I wasn't always invisible. Not to everyone. Just to the people I wanted most to see me. Growing up, Melanie was the sun. Bright, loud, and always at the center. She won every talent show, every teacher's praise. She never doubted her spotlight. And me, I learned to live in the quiet. I read books, listened more than I spoke, and got good at being helpful. After college, when I joined the Air Force, my parents thought it was just a phase. "You'll probably be handing out water bottles," my dad joked. "Keep your head down and it'll be a steady paycheck." I didn't argue. I never did. I just nodded, packed my duffel, and shipped out. Boot camp came and went. I ranked top 10 in tactical operations, and from there, flight training, active duty, and eventually intelligence command. I went wherever they needed me. Syria, Germany, Korea. I served in war zones and briefing rooms, ran logistics in blackout conditions, and once helped coordinate an evacuation with 6 allied nations on 48 hours' notice. But back home, "Rachel's still on base," they'd say. "She's doing office work or something." At first, I corrected them. I sent photos in uniform, told stories about coordinating defense operations and joint task forces, but they never really listened. The moment I'd say classified, they'd smile like I was making it up. So one year, right around Thanksgiving, I stopped explaining. Melanie never noticed. She was too busy showing off her latest PR campaign, or her trip to Cabo, or the new guy she was dating who totally gets her ambition. Every time I came home, she greeted me like I'd just finished a shift at a DMV office. No one asked what I actually did. No one asked how it felt to fly in a storm with radar blacked out, or how I managed a team of 40 during a cyber breach at a secure satellite base. They didn't want to hear it, so I let them believe whatever made them comfortable. I told myself I didn't need their approval, that what I did mattered regardless, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting, because you can be decorated with medals and still feel unseen when your own mother thinks you're just working on spreadsheets in the desert. And no matter how strong you are, there's something about being overlooked that settles into your bones. So I stayed quiet. Until tonight. I never planned on outranking anyone. I just did the work. Quietly. Relentlessly. By the time I was 28, I had led over a dozen successful joint operations. I'd been stationed across 3 continents and finished a master's in systems logistics from Georgetown during midnight shifts on base. At 29, I was promoted to colonel, youngest in our unit's history. I still remember the day General Halverson handed me the insignia. "You've earned this," he said. "You don't shout to lead, Rachel. You just move, and people follow." My hands shook as I pinned the eagle to my jacket, not from nerves, but from the weight of what it meant. I wasn't just someone moving crates in the background anymore. I was commanding aerospace response teams, overseeing contracts with billion-dollar implications, and sitting at the table with people who made national decisions. But none of that ever made it to our family group chat. I once tried to mention a defense symposium I'd spoken at in D.C. Melanie replied with a picture of her new gel manicure and asked if anyone had watched the Bachelor finale. Even then, I didn't get angry. I just stopped sharing. I told myself I had people who understood. My team, my commander, my cousin Jenna. She was the only one in the family who ever showed up for me. When I was sworn in as colonel, she flew out without being asked, sat in the back row of the hangar, and cried during the oath. "You have no idea how proud I am of you," she whispered, hugging me afterward. "One day they'll see." But I wasn't holding my breath. My mother still called me our little helper. My dad joked once at Christmas that I must be good at taking orders. And Melanie, she built a story around me. Dependable, harmless Rachel. The one who always had time to babysit her dog when she traveled. The one who stayed single because she was married to spreadsheets. So I let the myth stand, because shattering it would have felt like betrayal. I didn't realize it then, but I was shrinking myself just to fit into their version of me. And the smaller I made myself, the more they applauded the space they took up. But life has a funny way of circling back. Because at that table, in that glittering backyard full of string lights and catered canapes, Melanie's perfect story collided with a truth too loud to ignore. And it had 3 syllables. Colonel Donovan. To understand why my truth hit so hard that night, you'd have to understand Melanie. She didn't just like attention. She needed it, like oxygen. From high school homecoming crowns to PR awards printed on glossy plaques, Melanie collected praise like trophies. She knew how to light up a room, tell a story that made her look like a genius, and always position herself as the star, even when no one else was in the frame. She worked in public relations for a luxury skincare brand. "We only work with clients who align with elegance," she once said at Thanksgiving, while passing around truffle deviled eggs. Her Instagram was a rotating carousel of designer brunches, client launches, and just casual enough selfies with Lucas. Captioned things like, "Building empires one brand at a time." And to be fair, she was good at it. But the louder her success got, the smaller I became in our family's eyes. When Melanie walked in, my parents straightened up. My mother would immediately ask about her latest campaign. My father poured her wine like she was royalty. And me? "Rachel, can you help your sister carry in her gift bags?" Or, "Sweetheart, how's the computer work? Still busy over there?" The last time I tried to talk about my division's aerospace protocol training, Dad blinked and said, "Sounds complicated. You must be tired of staring at spreadsheets." So I smiled. I said, "Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork." Melanie smirked. "She's basically the behind-the-scenes glue," she told Lucas once. "She probably knows where the generals keep their coffee." And that's how I existed in the family narrative. The quiet one, the helpful one, the assistant. And I played along, not because I was ashamed of who I was, but because I knew they wouldn't hear it. Not over the echo chamber of Melanie's carefully crafted image, but every time she made one of those comments, every time someone nodded like they understood, something inside me cracked a little more. Because I hadn't worked 18-hour shifts in command rooms just to be treated like a glorified receptionist. And what stung most wasn't that they misunderstood me. It's that they chose to. So I stayed in the shadows, let her shine, let her have the stage, until that night at her engagement party, when the lights turned, unexpectedly, in my direction. And for the first time, she couldn't dim me. Not with a joke. Not with a smile. Not even with a lie. I got to Melanie's engagement party an hour early, like Mom had asked. Not because I was excited, but because I always showed up when they needed me, even if they never noticed. The backyard looked like something out of a bridal magazine. White drapes fluttered above the pergola. Gold-rimmed glassware sparkled under fairy lights. There was a table for gifts, one for cocktails, and a third where I was immediately asked to help fluff the linen napkins. Whatever that meant. "Rachel, could you handle the drink station?" Mom said, adjusting a tray of appetizers without looking at me. Melanie wants everything perfect for when Lucas's parents arrive. I nodded. Of course. That was always my role. Make it easier for everyone else to shine. By 6 o'clock, the guests were arriving. Laughter bubbled through the yard. A jazz quartet started playing under the sycamore tree. I took my place by the bar, smiling politely, topping off champagne flutes. And then a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. Melanie stepped out first, glowing in a pale blue designer dress that hugged every curve just so. Her ring caught the sunset like a mirror. She waved dramatically, always performing, even walking up the stone path. Lucas emerged behind her, tall and composed, his suit tailored like it belonged on a magazine cover. He shook hands, kissed cheeks, smiled for pictures. I watched from the drink table as they worked the crowd like royalty. Melanie was radiant, effortless, loud. Lucas, on the other hand, looked sharp but slightly unsettled. He scanned the room often, his jaw tight, like something about the evening didn't sit right. Maybe it was the weight of her expectations. Maybe it was me. I knew we'd met before. Not formally, but during a highly classified joint briefing 18 months ago. He was military intelligence liaison then. Different haircut, no beard. But those eyes. I remembered those eyes. Jenna, my cousin, the only one in the family who truly knew who I was, leaned in beside me. "He doesn't recognize you, does he?" "No," I said quietly. "Not yet." Later, Melanie swept past the drink station and grabbed Lucas's hand. "Come meet my sister," she said, dragging him toward me like I was part of the decor. "Lucas, this is Rachel. You've heard me talk about her. She works at an airbase in New Mexico or Nevada, somewhere dusty. Admin stuff. She's brilliant at it." Lucas extended a hand, polite but reserved. "Nice to finally meet you," he said. "Melanie talks about you all the time." "She forgets most of the details," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. We shook hands. His grip was firm, and just for a moment, his brows twitched. Recognition, just beginning to surface. Melanie didn't notice. She was too busy laughing with the guests about her upcoming trip to Santorini, about how Lucas was basically the youngest partner at his firm, about how some people chase jets, while others chase spreadsheets. She tossed me a glance with that signature smirk, and I knew it was coming. That moment I'd been waiting years for. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And soon the table would ask the question that would break the silence wide open. Dinner was served on long banquet tables under hanging lanterns. Guests laughed, sipped wine, and toasted to Melanie and Lucas, the power couple. I sat at the far end, right where Melanie had seated me, between Aunt Clarice, who overshares, and a folding chair meant for last-minute guests. Melanie was at the center, of course. Every camera faced her. Every toast ended with her raising a glass and saying something effortlessly rehearsed. Then, just as dessert was being placed, she tapped her fork against her glass and stood. "I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here," she began, voice smooth like a TV host. "Lucas and I are so excited to build a life together." Everyone clapped. She continued, "Some of us argue landmark cases, some of us launch million-dollar campaigns, and some of us answer phones at air bases." Laughter rippled across the table. I didn't blink. Lucas didn't laugh. He turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. "Wait," he said. Rachel Donovan?" I set down my fork and met his gaze. "Yes? Cannon base?" DOD Task Group 12? His voice dropped. His face went pale. The entire table hushed, the sound of clinking silverware fading into the wind. That was you, he whispered. Operation Sentinel. You briefed our entire team. Now the silence was total. Melanie looked back and forth between us, confused. What's going on? She asked. Lucas's voice was low, measured. She's not admin staff, she's Colonel Donovan, the commanding officer who oversaw the final air clearance decisions in Sentinel. She outranked almost everyone in the room. Melanie laughed. It was sharp and shaky. You're joking. She's not. She works at a base. She does clerical stuff. No, I said simply. I command aerospace strategy for our division. I've held a classified clearance since I was 26. The word colonel finally settled over the table like thunder. Melanie's expression twisted. She looked betrayed, furious, exposed. This is my engagement party, she hissed. And of course, you just had to make it about you. I didn't say a word until you mocked me in front of everyone, I said, calm and still, until you made sure they all laughed. Lucas was staring at me like I'd materialized out of another world. You outranked half the Pentagon, he said quietly. And you let everyone think you sorted files? I nodded. No one ever asked. A pause. Then Jenna, from across the table, said clearly, She's the real deal. I went to her promotion ceremony. She commands teams that move satellites. My father looked like he'd just aged 10 years. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her wine. Melanie looked like the oxygen had been sucked out of her lungs. You lied to me, she whispered. I never lied, I said. I just stopped correcting you. And for once, the silence belonged to them, not to me. Melanie shoved her chair back so fast the legs screeched across the stone. The whole table jolted at the sound. You let me say those things, she snapped, her voice too loud. You let me think you were just. She couldn't even finish the sentence. Her face flushed, but not from embarrassment. This was rage. You're so manipulative, Rachel. You made me look like a fool. I didn't move. I didn't make you say anything, Melanie. You did that on your own. She blinked at me, furious and cornered. This was supposed to be my night. And it still is, I said evenly. I didn't bring up my job. You did, again. You just didn't expect the truth to be inconvenient. Lucas stood slowly, still staring at me, then turned toward Melanie. You never told me your sister was Colonel Donovan, he said softly. I mean, how could you not know? Melanie looked betrayed. Because she never said anything. Lucas raised his eyebrows. Or maybe you never listened. That hit her like a slap. She looked around the table as if searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But all she saw were stunned relatives with champagne half drunk and mouths half open. My mother was pale. My father sat stiffly, arms crossed, like someone had just read him a eulogy for the version of me he preferred. My Uncle Richard, the one who once told me over Thanksgiving dinner that admin girls are the glue, looked like he wanted to melt into his seat. Only Jenna met my gaze. She gave me the smallest, proudest nod. I can't believe this, Melanie muttered, eyes shining now. You completely hijacked my party. I was fine staying in the corner, I said, my voice calm but firm. You dragged me into the spotlight. I just didn't lie when you did. Lucas reached for Melanie's hand, but she pulled away. You knew, she whispered to him. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know until 20 minutes ago, he said. I just connected the dots. But now I can't unsee it. And I don't think I want to marry someone who needs to dim her sister just to feel bright. Melanie gasped like he'd slapped her, then turned, heels clicking furiously as she stormed toward the house. Lucas didn't follow her right away. Instead, he looked at me one last time. Colonel Donovan, he said, more respectful than any title Melanie had ever used for me. You earned that. Then he walked away, leaving me seated at the table with a dozen silent relatives, a barely touched filet mignon, and a truth that could no longer be denied. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls and over 40 unread texts. Some were from extended relatives, shocked and apologetic. A few were from coworkers who'd somehow heard what happened and were low-key impressed. 3 were from my parents. None were from Melanie. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, sipping black coffee in my Air Force Academy sweatshirt, staring at the framed certificate on the wall. Colonel Rachel Donovan. For years, I'd kept that part of me separate, not because I was ashamed, but because I was tired of forcing people to see what they didn't want to, especially my family. But last night, the curtain dropped, and the silence was over. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I didn't expect to see him. Lucas stood there, shirt wrinkled, tie loosened, eyes tired. "She doesn't know I'm here," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. He walked slowly around my apartment, pausing at the military commendations on the shelf. His eyes stopped at the framed photo of me in uniform, standing on a flight line in Qatar with my team. "Kolia base," he said softly. "I remember this rotation. The whole room knew you were the one to watch." I nodded. "That was a long deployment." He turned to face me. "You were extraordinary in the briefing room," he said. "But last night, you showed more restraint than I've seen from any commanding officer. Ever." I sat across from him. I didn't feel restrained. I felt like I finally let go of something I'd been carrying for far too long. He nodded slowly. "She's hurting," he said. "But so am I. The way she spoke to you, so dismissive, so cruel. I didn't see it before. I don't know if I can move forward with someone who has to outshine everyone to feel whole." I didn't respond. It wasn't my decision to make. He stood after a moment. "Thank you for the coffee. And for the clarity." When he left, the apartment felt still again, but not heavy. Not like it used to. 2 days later, Melanie showed up. No makeup. Hoodie, hair in a messy bun, eyes red and puffy. She looked more real than I'd seen her in years. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded. We sat on the couch in silence for several minutes before she spoke. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would it have mattered?" I asked gently. She didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "I was supposed to be the successful one." I exhaled. "You still can be, but not by erasing me." Her eyes brimmed again. "I don't want to blame you," she said. I think I got lost in this version of me that looked good in pictures." "That's not who you have to be," I said. And for the first time in years, we saw each other. Without filters, without performance, without the distance we'd both clung to. Before she left, she paused at the door. "I'm proud of you, Rachel," she said. "I always have been. And maybe that's the part that scared me the most. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. 3 months later, we're not best friends, but we're better." I stopped hiding. My parents started listening. Melanie started therapy and honesty. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need their validation. But I got it. And this time, I didn't shrink to fit their comfort. I stayed whole. So tell me, have you ever played small just to keep the peace? Have you ever hidden your light because someone else couldn't handle the glow? If this story speaks to you, you're not alone, and you don't have to stay quiet forever.